Today let's talk about polymer banknotes, or commonly known as plastic money. Sounds like that. So the plastic money or polymer banknotes, it's made up of polypropylene, which is kind of a synthetic material, and it's an alternative of a paper money, which is widely used in the most part of the world, and the primary reason why the plastic money appear in the daily life is to combat counterfeiting and also the forgery. There is some interesting history why plastic money, like polymer banknotes, appeared, and there are some countries who already adapted the polymer banknotes fully. Some countries like Malaysia are partially only 1 ringgit and 5 ringgit, and the rest of the world, most countries still using paper money. So that why it has happened. So let's find out one by one. So first, let's talk about the history of the polymer banknotes. In the year 1966, Australia has changed its currency system from the classic pound, LSD something, pound shilling and penny farthing something, to the decimal based currency. $1 equal to 100 cents. Easy to remember, easy to use. And the new Australian dollar was printed and then circulated widely. However, the new currency, the new banknotes, especially the $10 banknotes, is widely counterfeited because of the lack of security features. And do remember that Australia is really a big country right here with wide range of temperature, economic activities, and also the money need to be durable. But yeah, maybe some circumstances it not be like so. And the irony is that the paper 10 Australian dollars is featured a portrait of Francis Green, which was convicted of forgery. Ironically, so the forger of a financial document is appeared in a paper money, real and forged, and both. So thus, in 1968, Australian government, especially the Reserve Bank of Australia, tried to find out how to combat the counterfeiting activities and also the forgery, because counterfeit money costs the economy really bad, because of if people can replicate the money easily, there will be some inflation happening and also distrust in the currency value itself, so much so that it damage the economy in general. And thus there's some ideas that have been discussing and going on, and one of the primary researchers in the Cicero Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization in Australia, one of the scientists is named Dave Solomon. He suggested that instead of using paper or cotton paper usually used to print money, why not use other materials, for example plastic, because initially they want to prevent people from taking the photo of the currency, the money, and then photocopy it or print it otherwise. When the like camera film at that time, in the 1970s and 80s they used camera film. When they suggested that the camera film was need to have like really high tech something in order to prevent the photography of the money, instead of changing the technology of the film, which is quite difficult already, why not just change the money, which is quite straightforward, because new material is much more harder to counterfeit. After all, who can print something on the plastic in the 70s, 80s? Even today in the year 2022, who has a printer who can print it on plastic? So that is the rationale of why Australia start to switch from using paper money into the plastic money, and the development takes about quite a lot, so about 20 years, because of the conservative character of the financial system. Because if you want to chase some here for sure, you need to have like deep trust. If like say that one country use plastic and the whole world like didn't use like this stuff, so like do people want to save this as kind of money, or even more importantly as a reserve? Because Australian dollar is not only keep like for the daily transaction, it keep in the banks in the reserve as part of the like strategy to maybe like to save the store the value, or to strengthen up the national currency, especially in the third world country like trading with Australia, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and such, because we buy a lot of beef and milk and butter from Australia. That's why like Australian dollar is not only for daily transaction but also for the reserve currency. So if the material is so unconventional, do people want to accept it? So the gradual acceptance of plastic money, the polymer banknotes, happened one by one. First step, in the year 1888, during the 200th bicentennial anniversary of the colonization of Australia, the first ever proper polymer banknotes has been appeared to the public and sell it as a commemorative item. It's mean like collectible item and sold, and it went really well to the public. People want it because it is so unique to the design, and after all, this is the first proper polymer banknotes in the world. Who doesn't want it? Of course, there are some design or like development of polymer banknotes previously, especially using the material called Tyvek, but the material has a own issue, especially in the heated environment. Some countries try to print the polymer banknotes, plastic money, using Tyvek material, that the synthetic material, but there is an issue with the heat, because when if the plastic being overheated especially in the tropical climate in Australia, especially in the northern part, or like in the state of Queensland, in the northern, like in the middle of Australia and outback, which is so hot, the plastic can melt and like stick to each other. So people like will the money will be lose its value. So Tyvek is not really popular. This the brand new material that after research in Cicero by Dave Solomon, this material was being patented and being used as the primary material to print the money. And one by one, after the popularity of the commemorative banknotes in the year 1988, the Australian banknotes start to gradually switch from paper to plastic. First of all, being changed is with the problematic $10. In the year 1993, the first ever daily usage, mass producing polymer banknotes, $10 Australian dollars, was being introduced, and later 5 years later, in 5 years later, in 1998, Australia has switched fully its currency to plastic, which means like from $5 until the 100, all series being used is using polymer right now. So that is a little bit of background of how Australia give the birth of the polymer banknotes, the first country which adapted polymer banknotes, and later slowly other countries will adapt because of its advantages. First of all, polymer banknotes is much more durable than paper. It lasts longer because the plastic, you try to stretch it and tear it up, it's really strong. And let's say that if there is any like torn part or what, you can just simply fix it easily with sellotape, and the repair is little subtle, unlike the paper. If you use a sellotape on the paper, we know that the paper money is already damaged and can be like refused. It's really durable. That is why like it is much more economical for the central bank or the reserve bank for the long run to print the polymer banknotes instead, because the paper banknotes, they need to replace every 2 or 3 years. Because after 2 years the paper money will be damaged, need to be taken out of circulation and replaced by the new one. But this one, it can quite remain in circulation for quite a long time, 5 years and 10 years. This already the Malaysian like this Malaysian ringgit is already in design for like in the past 10 years. It's still in maybe 10 years, 8 years ago. It's still in the same design. They don't change much. The second advantage of the polymer banknote is that it is recyclable. It's made up of plastic. When the money is become like too ugly or too bad or too look really soiled, you just simply take out of circulation and just being recycled as a plastic and then made it to the other stuff. Compare with the paper money, the alternative when the paper money is taken out of circulation, the only options that central bank have to destroy the money is by the shredding or burning or make it to recycle it. Usually they will resort to burning it because of the like security features and stuff. And the third reason why polymer banknotes is really good, have advantages, is much cleaner. Take a look at the paper banknotes and also the plastic like this. Plastic is actually the polymer banknotes is actually the surface is much more smoother, and essentially you can clean it with a soap, a dishwasher soap in what's it. So like in the era of pandemic, it's like in the last 2 to 3 years already. So like there is a like trauma or like phobia when handling something like this when you got something from other people. So when there is something like soil or what, you can simply wash it with water or with soap. So it's much more cleaner. That's why it lasts longer. So far, other than Australia, the usage of the polymer banknotes has been expanded into a few other countries. For example, New Zealand, Canada, Papua New Guinea or Romania, Brunei Darussalam, Maldives, what country call it? Mauritania in Africa, in Mauritania, Nicaragua, Vanuatu, and the latest of all is the United Kingdom, where Bank of England finally like introducing the new plastic 50 pound, and a number of other countries also using the polymer banknotes, especially for the lower denomination. For example, in Malaysia, the polymer banknotes is used for 1 ringgit and 5 ringgit. 5 ringgit is about $1.10, and this one is about a quarter of US dollar. And the rest of the currency is using a paper money. In Singapore, they use polymer banknotes for $2 and $5, and other countries as well. They use it for the lower denomination, and the upper one still using paper currency. So why does this half thing happen? I will explain it in the last part. Why there are few countries adapting the polymer banknotes, but the rest of the world, most countries, especially the advanced economy, the big size economies, like for example America, European Union, China, still using paper, even though the plastic sounds like really cool and much more durable. The reason number one is the cost. The cost of printing polymer banknotes are more expensive, and it is more expensive than printing on the paper, obviously, because to find the special ink to make it stick on the polymer, the plastic, and also find a plastic that can accept the ink to accept the ink, that is really a tough part. That is why polymer banknotes is such really expensive. In fact, to make one polymer banknote, it costs about 5 to 6 times more than making a paper money. So cost is one of the consideration, and this point can explain why some of the countries, for example Malaysia and Singapore, use half, which means like lower denomination use plastic and the higher denomination use a paper. Because the higher denomination, for example like 10, 50 and 100, the usage on the daily life is lesser, which means like not every day people use like 50 or 100, but people use 1 and 5 every day. So the paper, the paper is the paper money which high denomination is less likely to be soiled or damaged because they reuse lesser than the lower denomination. So because the lower denomination is made of plastic, so that's why it's much more durable. If in the past they use paper, so it's damaged or soiled really quickly. I mean really quickly, can become dirty and crumple and such. So like to save money, to save the cost. So that's why that some of the countries like Malaysia and Singapore use half and half thing, like the higher denominations to use paper because the cost of printing it is still cheaper. And the second reason why is because of the conservative character of the financial world. Do remember that the change to change the financial system is quite slow, because everyone need to, the whole world need to agree on the system. If they say that only half of the world agree, that could be a problem. When the one country start to adapt the plastic money, the other countries need to willingly accept the plastic money. The polymer banknotes is an acceptable asset. It takes time, and Australia also like that takes time to adapt by their own first, make people are really confident that plastic money is as valuable as paper money. Of course valuable because people trust the value, and when the people start to trust the polymer banknotes and such, the usage becomes widespread. After all, today the plastic, the polymer banknote is much more common than 10 years or 20 years before. The third reason is the material. It made up of plastic. The country that produce petroleum, for example, we will have no problem like getting a raw material to produce a polymer. Australia is the producer of oil, especially in the northern part of Australia, and also like Brunei Darussalam and also Malaysia and such will like bigger. But still, Australia keep primarily make it because plastic is widely available. Other paper banknotes, even though the name is called paper, it's not made up of wood pulp like the normal paper or the tissue paper is made up of wood. Usually the paper money is made up of cotton, most commonly used in the as a paper money ingredient, especially in the US dollar, in euro they use and also in Chinese yuan they use cotton. So the cotton is like processed like making a paper. So that's why like if you wash the paper money, put it in the washing machine, the paper is still intact. It's not like destroy or crumble like the wood pulp paper. There are also some countries that use their own indigenous material to print out the paper. For example, in Indonesia they use abaka, and in Philippines they use ham. Like completely the same thing. They just take it out, process it, and make it like kind of paper. It's much more durable than the wood paper. And the other things is that there are some political lobbying in the background, because that they are also, because the cotton industry and also the ham abaka industry is a big industry in the country where produce it, especially in the like in the United States. United States is a primary producer of cotton. So when the and since US dollar printer, Federal Reserve Federal Reserve is the primary buyer of cotton in the United States. So if the government or the Federal Reserve want to switch the material to another, so there will be a concern to the cotton industry, because the demand of the cotton supply will be reduced. That's why, and also because of the and the same thing happened in Indonesia and also in the Philippines, where the indigenous ham industry lobby to the government. Why do you want to import such stuff from overseas, which can be fluctuated in prices, where we have something grown in our own land that we can literally print it and become the money. So that's why it issued the material such. The fourth reason why the plastic thing, the polymer banknotes is still not widespread is because of the technology. The technology is patented by Cicero still, and it's being licensed and being like sell into another printer. For example, Thomas de la Rue is as a licensable patented technology. So not all countries, not all companies who print out banknotes have the technology to print out on polymer, on plastic. Only a few. In fact, for the Malaysian Bank Negara Malaysia, the central bank didn't mention where they printed out this, but clearly this money is printed in Australia, because Australia is the nearest country where the plastic money printing technology is available. And because of the limitedness of the technology available, so compare with the printing on the paper money, the paper banknote, that is why the paper banknote is still widespread, because the technology is widely available, and the company and also the supplier of the paper banknote is much more than the plastic one. So that is why, because of the limitedness of the technology and the limitedness of who can print it out, that's why the limit. So that is why, like, only a few countries who are really interested to print to have their own banknotes in the polymer. So that is the story of how polymer banknotes come into realization. In the future, interestingly, the country that adapted polymer banknotes is hardly ever like change the design, because the counterfeiting or forgery is really rare, especially lower denomination. Who wants to have like troublesome finding some plastic or such, printing out this just for like a quarter of a dollar? That is why it's really safe. And some of the countries who adapted the polymer banknotes, for example, Brunei has they have a clean record of almost zero forgery, because it is almost impossible because to forge polymer banknotes print on plastic. It's simply not worth it. In advance of in the future, because like the most of the countries like start to adapting digital payment stuff, cryptocurrency, so the future of the cash may be still bright, because it's much faster, and some of the places still have a problem with the internet connection. So that they also the one of the reason why the countries with that use paper banknotes are not adapting polymer banknote, because of the cost. Number two is why bother with the physical stuff when everything is now increasingly digital as such. So at the end, polymer banknotes so unique, and the sound is so